outputting out. It was something.
So is that good?
For me?
Is that cool? Can you hear me? Gary?
Yeah, so the only thing is we'll just have to use, we'll be using your camera, like, you can't hear, my sound
I gotta
sucks.
look at this camera.
Yeah, what, I think it's your camera that we're pulling from
I
now.
need to turn it off.
No, that's the camera that, like, if I introduce you, that's the camera that I'll talk to.
Wait, so it's this one for sure.
Okay.
Which one? The one?
It's
in
the one
back?
behind the
Oh, okay,
external.
okay. All right, perfect. So the only thing is too, that then when if I do stop my video, you're just gonna see my face.
You're good. Judge this hair up. So we'll just leave this running, Carrie, for a bit while you do the intros.
So, oh, but this is not what you see. So that's not what you see. That's what you see too. Right? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so the people,
They don't see any of this.
they don't see, but I
Sharing the presentation.
Yeah. that's
Here,
in
but-
presenter view.
oh, but it's in presenter view for you. Wouldn't it be however their view is set?
Not, you just looked at it, it looked like that, right?
It looks like that with, yeah, this and then my headshot.
That was it. You didn't see this, right?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
fine.
no.
It should be fine. I mean, if anything, they see my notes.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think that is, yeah, I don't think the notes are gonna show. Do you want a water bottle? Yeah. Yeah, this other thing, let's get it. Not you, no one wants it Yes, and actually I wonder if I should twist it a little so it can be seen over here. And then not too far, so they can also see it. Is that good? Can you guys see this? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good. So I had somebody. Let's see. It's muted. Oh, I think, is she using this one?
Hello?
Yeah. Has a call, in the, on the list for the days of that, and I was like, 10:30, I don't know what to do. I don't know how much issue. Yeah, definitely wanted to do that. I thought it was very interesting. Oh, what? Do they have, well, a good look at them? So you just got to go. She's there. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, like what was. Yes. Well, and then they're pictures as they're, and they're very often. Sponsored item. We got it. Yeah. Basically just. Well, okay, we'll be doing like this. Oh. How are you doing? Okay. Your face. Should we get started? Okay, got a nice big group.
Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Dillon. I am the Managing Director for the International Textile Alliance, who is the producer of Interwoven. Thank you all for coming. It's a great big group, and we're very excited to have you. A little bit about our organization. So we are a not-for-profit business association of textile mills, leather tanneries, converters, jobbers, suppliers to the industry that originally, the show was originally developed for furniture manufacturers. So the furniture manufacturers would come, shop their fabrics, put it up, so they would come, like, say in May, shop the fabrics, put them on the frame for market in October. Then if the retailers come and they like it, then they get the order. And so it's a bit of a, turn it down. No, it's okay. Well, we're just, yeah. So a little bit, that's what our show is. It's very unique. It's an appointment-based show. So we have, there's a tower of probably 60 permanent showrooms here, 20 across town, and then a few spread out throughout town. We have a shuttle that runs to all those buildings, but they are, primarily manufacturers of upholstery weight fabric that are selling in large quantities. And so that is, it might be the mill, it might be a converter. So a converter would be someone who would take goods and bring them in, and it might be they take a gray good, which is like and forgive me if I'm telling you things that you already know, but like a plain fabric, take their design, print it on there. It may be an importer who's bringing it in and warehousing it and distributing it that way. Let's see, what else? Jobber. So y'all definitely would be familiar with the jobbers like Fabricut, Kravet. So those two particular companies, they're here exhibiting. And they're exhibiting to sell to the furniture manufacturers, but they also are shopping here. So they've got their buying team here, shopping all the rest of the members to find fabrics to put together in beautiful books to present to you at a designer. Obviously the pricing is different because they have the cost of the sampling, they have the cost of putting the books together, the warehousing, the cutting of the orders. So there's a lot more involved, and for that reason, that's why not all of our members sell directly to design. However, we have, it's up here. That's why we create this lovely list, and I have a copy for each of you. So this is our to the trade members. These are our members that want to sell and are equipped, set up to sell to designers. They all have this beautiful sticker somewhere by their door to designate them. And we do that because we want to make it also easy for you to find the companies that you can do business with, because you don't want to waste time talking to somebody, you're gonna have to buy 60 yards. I would imagine that's not often that you buy 60 yards for a project. So I encourage you to please visit these members. They have some beautiful things. You're hitting it to what they're introducing now is what will be on the retail floor in spring of 23. So it's a little bit ahead of the curve. And so Jay, obviously that's what we're here for, to hear Jay speak about that. But I'll also want to mention too, we have a lovely new tannery from Turkey. Their name is Ugner. They are up at the courtyard wing of the floor, and he said, please send them all to my booth. I will take them all to lunch. So if you don't have lunch plans, please see, his name is Urchin. And he's very lovely. And they're a new member just getting established here. So I'm sure he'd love to meet with you. Anything that you can think of that I should touch on?
Does anybody have questions about this show and want to know where to start, Carrie?
We've got a few minutes for questions. I mean, and we can just talk to, we want to wait until 10:30 to start Jay's presentation because we have people watching via Zoom. And so we'll hang out for a few minutes, but certainly any questions you have about, the relationship between our members and the designers and the manufacturers, I'm happy to answer. So we're glad to have you here.
When is the next show?
So our next show is November 13th through 17th. I guess I could talk a little bit too about, so anybody that's familiar at all with this market, it's been known as Showtime we were established in 1990. So for the past, 20, 30 years, it's been known as Showtime. And it started with a group of textile reps who would get in a caravan. They would travel to Hickory, where there's a group of furniture manufacturers. And they thought, well, gosh, wouldn't it be easier to just have them come to us? So it was just 5 guys that put it all together. I think the first show that they had like 15 companies here set up down in the basement with card tables. And then now, we've grown to this. We have 111 exhibitors at this show. And again, they're spread out too, throughout other buildings as well. We've kind of dispersed a little bit. It used to primarily be here, which I guess it still is primarily, but there's members all over. Let's see, where was I going with that?
Just the branding.
Oh, thank you. That's where it was going. Yeah, so we had been known at Showtime forever. Last year, we've been talking about it for years, but last year made the step to move to a rebranding. Instead of that, I'm convinced that the Showtime name came from people saying, we're having a textile show, it's Showtime. And like, we always do the little like jazz hand, like it's Showtime, because we just didn't like the name. And so we thought Interwoven speaks more to not only obviously the textiles, the woven textiles, but also the interconnectedness of the industry, because it is a very tight knit industry around here. And obviously the show is where we come to catch up every 6 months. You have you've got our buyers here, you've got the executives of the companies here, everybody in one place at one time. So it's a great, it's like a reunion every 6 months. And that's really a key part of the show for us. It's not just about the fabric. There's that relationship that's a really important part of it too, that you can't get without being here. So that's kind of the idea behind the rebranding, but we worked with this wonderful marketing team based out of Greensboro, Crowbar Creative. They really helped us not only rebrand the show, the look and the feel, but our magazine as well. And so I actually have some copies here, but this is our new magazine. The magazine was renamed as well. It was Showtime previously and is now known as Interwoven, but they've done a beautiful job with that. I hope you'll take a copy home. You also can go in our courtyard, the brick courtyard out. It's in the courtyard. There's some tents set up. There's some beautiful like displays from some of our members. And then they built this structure for the photo shoot it's there. So you can go and take your own interwoven cover photo. So I would encourage you to do that as well. I I also brought some, so this is our show guide as well. And so this will be very helpful for you, in addition to the trade list. So this includes our scheduled events, which again, today we have a presentation with Tencel, one of our members, talking about the innovation within their company at 2:00. At 4:00, we have a panel with 3 of the designers, very talented designers in our industry, and Jay will be moderating and talking about it. The title is The Why Behind Design. So just where they get their inspiration. Some very interesting, very smart designers, and I'm excited. It's going to be a great discussion. So we have the schedule in here, as well as the map of the trade show floor and all the listing of the exhibitors by building. So this would be a helpful tool too. Yes.
Questions, comments, one thing for taking time
Sure.
to include us designers in this kind of work.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to be here and taking the time to show us the vendors that will work with us.
Of course.
Yeah, it's really fun. So.
Well, I think it's just, I don't know how many of you know, 10, probably not more than 10 years ago, High Point Market didn't allow designers in, or it was a kind of an interesting relationship. And that show has transitioned. And personally, I see our show doing the same thing. So this is kind of my way of saying, here's who we are, here's where we are now. And let's just, we'll see what happens. But I think it is certainly the members that are selling designers, a lot of them really, they have their division that's selling to furniture, and then they have a separate division that's set up, equipped to service designers. Because it's, it is a little bit of a different business, but there's no reason that all of our members couldn't do that. So it's, we'll see what happens. But thank you all for being here. We're very excited to have you here. Oh, yes. Yeah, that is a great question. So certainly it varies greatly from probably 4 weeks to 52 weeks at this time, depending on the mill and where they're sourcing. That is something too that a lot of the members are also showing what's available, because they want to be able to get it to you first. We did an online member showcase of quick ship items not long ago, just to say, hey, these are the items that are here. They can ship now. If you're looking for something, if you're looking to replace something for a project, here's a good resource to find something similar that might still work. But yeah, there's a wide degree of lead times around. So as I'm sure you've experienced with everything. Well, and a lot of times they are doing the introduction of it here, and it also depends on how popular it is and how well received it is. So they may have weaved, 10 yards of it to show, and then depending on the demand, will decide how they put it in their production schedule after this. So I guess it depends on how popular it is, on how quickly it'll be available. So sure. Does anybody else have any questions? So let me ask you, where is everybody coming from? Are we local? How many are from North Carolina? Okay, so that's most everybody. If you're not from North Carolina, where are you coming from? Okay, wow. Well, that's awesome. So have you traveled here this week for this event? Wow. Well, thank you for coming. I hope that it's everything that you dreamed. Okay. Oh, well, good. Well, thank you. Okay. Yeah, represent. Let's see. We got a few minutes. Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good idea. And I was trying to think, what else I might share while we've got a few more minutes. There's lots of interesting things about this show. I would say this is probably the 50th time that I've done this since setup started. Ended up with a bunch of shows I've done before. Thank you. Let's see. So actually, I did think of one other thing that might be interesting. When y'all are here for market, we do also have a similar list that we put out. So I would encourage you to follow us. You're all going to be in our database now, so you'll start getting our emails. So I hope you'll continue to receive those. But we put out a list of our members that are open during High Point Market, and will be in their showroom available to see you. So also keep an eye out for that. Hi. So, see if we can get some magazines. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait a few minutes. I just don't want people that are planning to get committed to 30 and then they get there and then. Okay, that's good. Let's do that. Okay. So actually, I'm gonna take a little bit of this. She just called, so. Yeah. Okay, I think if y'all are ready, we're gonna go ahead and get started with Jay's presentation. If you're not familiar with Fashion Sinks, I'm very excited for you to see this. So this is Jay Anna Mize. She is the VP of Creative Home and Lifestyle for Fashion Snoops. Jay has a passion for trend, psychology, technology, and design. Oh wait, you know what? I gotta get out of practice mode on the Zoom. Oh, it's not live. Oh, I don't have to. I'll do this and then I'll go cut it off. Sure. Okay. Well, I'll introduce you first. Trend psychology, technology, and design. Jay has branched across fashion into home interiors through her development and trend forecasting over the past 17 years. Working with major brands worldwide, Jay spends her time covering international events and analyzing key cultural insights within the home and interiors market to produce macro and micro projections. She is skilled in understanding consumer behavior and how that connects to product development, lifestyle forecasting, brand development, and retail strategies. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
Hey guys, how are you? So I'm so excited to be here. We've repartnered with Interwoven, which I'm really excited about because I feel like Interwoven really starts like kind of the trend process that you guys start to see, which is really exciting. It's, we work with product developers, and therefore when it actually hits the trade show floor, that's when the consumer starts to pick it up, that's when designers start to pick it up. So I also really kind of want to talk a little bit about the season that we're looking at right now. You guys, obviously, we've all been dealing with sourcing issues. I will say over the past 8 to 12 months, we've pushed up all of our deadlines significantly. So as we were starting into spring, summer 23 last year, we actually started creating what we're calling longevity trends. And you'll see it's a little bit more of an esoteric idea that drives down into product development. And the reason we did that is because we know that a lot of manufacturers are working in a multitude of seasons right now. It really depends on what their capabilities are. We're seeing a lot more like seasonless design. So what you'll see here is a little bit more generated to spring and summer, but it definitely falls into fall. Not to have a pun there, but which I think is really interesting and will carry a lot of those same consumer sentiments that we're seeing through the next year, as we know that trends are shuffling a little bit slower than we've ever seen before. So it's actually quite interesting angle to our business as we kind of look at how trends are going forward and moving forward. And just keep that in the back of your mind, like you'll see some things that feel really familiar to you, but then also we'll be hitting different target demographics at different times, whether it's more luxury or mass. So are you good? Okay, I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So hi guys, welcome to Spring Summer 23. This is one of my favorite seasons that we did. We're really looking at how we're reshuffling past the pandemic. Really, right? I think the pandemic really threw us on our heads. Consumers' values changed a lot. One of the biggest questions that I've gotten is like, what have you seen consumer-wise? And it's that they've stopped placing so much valuation into fashion and a lot more into home. We're seeing that the fast fashion circles are really kind of slowing down, especially as younger millennials become one of the top demographics that's starting to be purchasing. Particularly within the home realm, a lot is changing. We're seeing a lot more happy driven design, more tech driven design than we ever have before. So a little bit about us, who we are at Fashion Snoop. So we're a global creative agency. Actually, during the pandemic, we got rid of our full-time office in New York. Everybody spread all over the globe. My bosses moved back to Tel Aviv. I'm like the lone New Yorker. I'm just kidding. We do still have an amazing office in Soho, but we really went global, and we did that for numerous reasons, just because we want to explore all the time to see what's going trend-wise, but also just to have our feet on the ground. So we've been around for over about 22 years now. I've been there. I was their fourth employee. I was there since I was 19 years old. They've kind of like molded me in this position in a sense. But what we do is we study data and then we predict product development with it. So we have an AI-backed algorithm that we've built on our own at Fashion Snoops. And from there, we're able to see how things like sustainability are tracking, how ideals of wellness are tracking. I can tell you which demographics are picking up wellness more so than others. We're able to kind of then land in color prediction, material predictions, print and graphics, which we'll look at today, as well as actual like PD. So we work mainly with retailers and manufacturers, and then we have amazing partnerships like Interwoven, Maison Objet, where we're able to actually speak to the interior design crowd. So the 4 trends that we're going to be looking at today are called raw, belonging, release, and grow. And they're definitely, I feel like sometimes I always say this, like they're my favorite, but like really, these I feel like have a much more longevity. Even as we're working on spring 24 right now, we're still seeing key seeds from raw, grow, release come into fruition, particularly release, which I think will be quite shocking as you kind of see how to interpret it for home. So our first story that we're going to talk about is called raw. This was actually one of our first ideas when we were kind of cultivating what the season was going to look like. We really kind of think about these words and sentiments and really kind of gravitate towards like where the consumer is feeling. And I would say out of everything, consumers are feeling really raw right now. And so it's really interesting to kind of assimilate those cultural sentiments into an actionable look and feel. And it's exactly what you would think. So we've walked really, really far away from all the natural and actual ingredients from what we consume. And when was the last time end consumers experienced an ingredient or fiber such as cotton in its raw form like we used to? It's clear that we've over-layered, over-designed, and over-consumed, and we've really forgotten what the raw beauty of everything is. So the speed and chaoticness of modern life has begun to create an opposite consumer yearning for a return to what is natural, raw, and ancestral. So we always love to start our trend presentations about really understanding like what the consumer need is, why they're craving these things. And the number one thing is that they're really craving authentic experiences, especially if you guys are all on Instagram, right? You've actually probably started to notice how much more raw, unfiltered, vulnerable influencers are becoming on Instagram. They're really showing you the ins and outs. It's less of these kinds of filtered approaches, which we really love. We're also seeing that they're really craving more of a reconnection and transparency to the process of handmade goods. With the pandemic, a lot of people picked up hobbies and crafts and things really to re-explore how to get their hands dirty again. We really were in this insane overconsumption cycle. We're kind of stripping away a lot of that. We also really decluttered all of our lives, particularly within the home, which is really important to Raw as we're looking to replace those items with things that have a little bit more of a sustainable mindset and more longevity, less of this kind of like fast fashion churning approach to things. And then we're also really wanting, and just to reiterate this, ethically resourced products is really important. People want to know the why behind they designed them. They want to know where it came from. No longer are we accepting that it's just like this really beautiful piece. We want to feel connection to the artist and the artisan. If there were four key values, consumer key values that I would say to take away from this is really understanding the origins of design, where it came from, why is it important, stop kind of washing out those important storylines. Also stripping away like all of the extra, finishes and things that kind of make it less sustainable, as well as honoring the ingredients. We see this a lot in kind of the foods and flavors section, but it's definitely relating over into home in a big way of really kind of honoring things like the cotton in place. And we'll talk a little bit about that with materials. And then one of the biggest important conversations that I've been having a lot with manufacturers is being more conscious about your creation, like actually taking time to create a more thoughtful process. One of my favorite designers is Elsa Crawford. She's, genius out of UK. She was Maison Objet's designer of the year once upon a time, and I got to sit next to her and listen to her process of how she thoughtfully crafts cups to the perfect handle height, how important it was for her to have armchairs with the perfect, kind of bases and armrests that actually felt a lot more comfortable versus it being something that they just slapped together because they thought looked beautiful. She put a lot of time into consideration to the ergonomics of something. And so being a lot more conscious with those creative practices is really important. So how is Raw influencing design? So the origins of design are the most essential. This means the purest of colors, the most modest of surfaces, and the simplest of shapes speak volumes in a world of unnecessary excess and extravagance. It's time to take a pause from the chaos and restart ourselves in the midst of nothingness. What was basic before is now seen as bountiful, as we cherish the things that happily make our world feel more pared down for the first time in a really long time. The topography of rural terrain, it's nature's most brilliant blueprint, a landscape full of unyielding textures, sights, and sounds. So in Raw, we go back to where it all began, celebrating ingredients as they were meant to be enjoyed and magnifying our appreciation for the creator. So you'll hear me talk a lot about ingredients as we go through this particular sentiment. And I'm really talking about like way more than just food, flavors, and fragrance. I'm talking about the actual things that create product used as ingredients. Play you our beautiful videos. So this just lands where the mood is a little bit more. So we speak in visual language, as you guys can kind of tell. We really feel like working with creatives, it's their number one language, as opposed to giving you a lot of copy, and context all the time. We always really want to bring it full story with a lot of heavy visuals. So I hope that really landed kind of what the overall mood and feel of Raw is. So now we'll talk about the color that we're seeing specifically for this sentiment. And this is one of the strongest color palettes that I've really felt in a long time, particularly as I'm starting to wander out back into shows. We were just at Maison Objet and also High Point, and we leave for Milan next week. I cover about 35 shows a year. So these are very strong colors as base colors for sure. It's interesting to see all of these rosy hues, these kind of more clay hues, terracottas still being very prevalent in home. And the reason why is because they're comfort colors, they're grounding colors. They make people feel like they've created a haven in their home. We're seeing them also being accented with some of these really beautiful golden arenas that kind of mimic wheat or things that you would find in natural presence. Green is a very heavy sentiment throughout the entire season. You'll see it heavily throughout. And it's nice to see them have a little bit more of an earth intake, but I will say that they're slightly more blue casted for this season. And you'll notice too that we are reintroducing some more brown heavy blacks, which is really nice as opposed to it being so stark. One thing that you will not see is gray through most of these, which is quite interesting, I think. Instead, you'll see kind of like gray casted neutrals that feel a little bit similar. I don't know if you can see my, like right here. This guy right here, I think this pampas grass is a gray cast, but not necessarily a true gray, as well as some of these kinds of more like indigo flavors. And actually, I'll just give you a little hint. Indigo is one of our key colors for spring 24. So this is where we first started seeing it. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our sentiment color. This is the color that represents Raw in each one of these stories and how we land these colors. These are actually early prediction colors, our sentiment colors, and we sit collectively as a team to develop these, really looking at where the consumer behavior is and generating like the whys behind we're pushing this color. So we're really looking to reconnect authentically, which is why Husk is so important, as it is a movement towards undyed colors that celebrates the quiet simplicity of organic materials. And what you'll notice about this white is it's actually like a little bit of a yellow hue, creamed hue that comes through and really gives that authentic, almost like plucked from, you know, the field feel to it. It also is a key color for sustainability, which is important. And then we'll start talking materials and what are some key elements of kind of the materials and prints and patterns that you'll start to see. So Raw honors the humble origins of materials and surfaces as a means to cultivate a new craftsmanship and sustainability. We see skillful approaches to repurposing natural waste, one that supports regenerative techniques so that it replenishes as much as it takes away. That's so important as we start to look at material product development. So some key elements here that we're seeing on the forefront are really all of these undyed and bare yarns really coming into market. It's really about focusing on stripped surfaces and textured warps that invoke a pared down sensibility. It really honors what we're calling this slow craft movement that harnesses the natural striations of the sun, the rain, and the hands that bind them. We're also seeing a huge push towards eco mold everyday products, which emerges as a new craft movement in the home space. And it results from organic works being used as functional art. So at a high level, it captures this kind of like farm to home movement that is growing as consumers seek out sustainable brands with transparent production and responsible farming practices. And one of the other big conversations that I just wanted to fill you guys in on is what is called seed sovereignty. This is a really big movement that we're seeing across the board come to fruition. And it's one of the biggest movements in sustainability currently, as more and more manufacturers are looking at how to preserve seeds in an interesting way. So simply put, seed sovereignty is the right that farmers, gardeners, and other food producers have to save, use, breed, exchange, and sell openly. Seeds. So looking towards radical changes in our primary ecosystems for manufacturing and creating. So it's really interesting to kind of look at materials all the way down to like the seed fruition of how these things are created and looking at our ecosystems and really pushing towards change with them. Because currently, as you guys know, there's things like Monsanto and all of these kinds of different processes now in our manufacturing that is not sustainable at all, and it's not an open source. So a lot of times farmers are really kind of put under a lot of pressure. There's really amazing documentaries on it, particularly Dirty White Gold is a great one that really talks about all of these mills in India that are really struggling to survive from their farming. And we don't realize here in America how much our overconsumption is really feeding their demise. So it's starting really at the root and of rawness. If we look at where we are with home materials, we're now seeing organic materials offer a subtle sophistication to homewares that reframe our thinking of refinement in a more wholesome way. I would say this is a more modern, minimalist farmhouse that we're really seeing come to fruition, bringing a lot of these raw movements. And as we go into the next spring, it kind of morphs into an even more sophisticated, but a little bit more color as we go into spring 24. But things like undyed weaves sourced from flax and cotton feel incredibly light and supple, or looking at more reclaimed woods that kind of add to that sophisticated minimalism. A lot of color grown cotton is really interesting coming to market as eco-produced alternatives to saturated fabrics. And then we're seeing that raw stone, things that actually feel raw, those porous touches of raw stone, they still feel very delicate and almost like earthened, plucked among products. So as we move into pattern and graphics for raw, we are exploring how print comes through in a very organic and nature-inspired way. So we're really allowing the designs to naturally form in a slow yet impactful approach. So for this one, it's called Speckled Scrub. I really love it. We're looking to update the classic polka dot and even fine grained terrazzo through a tactile and unrefined process. This page really demonstrates a huge range of print options here, from those tactile infused prints of a super tiny micro speckle to more loose and illustrative macro sizes that even offer a gentle and artistic newness in traditional animal print. I love some of the more kind of like horse prints and things that we're seeing coming forward. Also, we're seeing crafted patchwork. It's really a more organic way to update our classic patchwork that we've seen over the past few seasons. I'm sure we even have a little bit trickled in and released that you guys have all seen checks and patches for a few seasons. This is just a new way to kind of update that classic. And we love how the texture is also really playing a really big role here. These uneven widths and irregular pattern placements lean into that more natural sensibility. And so our update to florals this season, and I'm so happy to say that we're starting to see so many florals come to play. This is one of two stories that actually plays heavily into floral. So we've had a few like floralless seasons, which was really sad. So it's really nice to kind of see florals reinvigorized in this time-honored approach to the petals through dried and pressed motifs and foraged nature. The foraging conversation is really interesting as that's coming to fruition too, really heavily into raw. And it's something that we're seeing more and more with a lot of the floral applications. As you see, some of the ditzier prints or all over prints really kind of mimic that almost preservation feel. So what are our key takeaways here with raw? We always love to kind of give some language to speak to the sentiment to our product developers. So looking at having more reciprocity with nature, meaning like what you take from it, you give back. Also looking at things like seed to shelf, pharmacy, or honoring the ingredients is super important, and really looking at things like rituals and ancestral rituals here. So the number one takeaway is really being intentional with your process. Consider seed to shelf and farm to closet or farm to home retailing movements. Get specific about your ingredients and make them the center of conversation. Also really empowering the slow down. One thing I actually forgot to mention is the movement of slow craft and like that conscious creation is actually a very slow living movement that we're seeing. So really empowering that across the board from your work practices all the way down to how you consume, and also investing more in the makers. Really, I mean, this goes into the manufacturer's world, but also as designers, really investing in the makers, investing in the maker's story is really important. So our next one is called belonging. So after an extended period of isolation and separation from our communities and workplaces, we are looking to put back together the pieces and regenerate our fundamental sense of collective union. The reshuffling of our lives has caused many to question where we belong and what we call home, which I find really interesting. Belonging is where we move from the idea of the individual to our community, sharing spaces and ideas as we embark on journeys to find where we truly belong. So as we look at some consumer needs here, one of the biggest things that we saw in home, particularly for the pandemic, is how many millennials were willing to have a more transient living lifestyle. They're going from hopping from Airbnb every 3 months. They're kind of traveling. They're living out of their vans. I'm not sure how many of you guys are on the TikTok these days, but there's an enormous van life movement on TikTok of people that are willing. I mean, honestly, it has a lot to do with the housing crisis, and they can't afford housing and things. So they're looking for different solutions of what they call home. And it's really interesting as they're starting to want and crave things that are a little bit more transient, that are more adaptable, that have a little bit more of that compact pack and go aesthetic to them. And we're also really reconsidering things like ownership. I won't dive heavily into the metaverse and NFT conversations here, as I'm very passionate about it, so I won't dive into it. But I will say, as we bridge from Web 2 into Web 3, the democratization of design is really important as we start to look at how people create. And that's really reconsidering ownership and what that means. So merge those two together, which is really kind of interesting. And we're really seeing how consumers are changing their ideas of community and what home means. So what are some key values here? Communality, really looking at who is your community. I think the pandemic made us kind of all question who our friends are. Or do we really need to be friends with this person? Or do we want to like branch out and have different aspects and different, goals in our life? Like, who do we want to bring into our circle? Reconsidering ownership. What does owning something really mean at the end of the day? Like, how long do you want to own something? What does home look like for you? I think one of the biggest things that we saw was from a seasonal perspective. I work heavily in things like Christmas and harvest, et cetera. And with Christmas, we saw so many people not wanting to go home again or back to their families. They're kind of rethinking what is family in their mind. So the meaning of home has really changed. And then also seeing that more and more consumers are becoming transient. They're not living a traditional kind of 1950s lifestyle anymore, that builds within one particular home. They're looking at more urban spaces. They're looking at smaller spaces. They're looking at places on the go, maybe investing in 2 small apartments versus 1 big house type of thing. So how is belonging influencing design? So how do we find our perfect place? This dizzying disarray of the universe leaves us feeling ungrounded and unfulfilled. In belonging, we re-examine the meaning of home and think about where and to whom do we exist. One of the advantages of the global pandemic was that it acted like a cultural tornado, blowing bits of community all over, leaving us to land in unexpected places, AKA the great reshuffling that we're seeing. Our newfound cosmic consciousness has us appreciating the possibilities of just about anything. This great escape frees us from the traditional confines of home, and our roles in society are being recast in ways we never dreamed. After years of decisive division, we yearn for total togetherness, a common goal of community that re-examines our priorities. So looking at what some of the belonging colors are, it really starts grounding us in what we're considering a little bit of an otherworldly, palette. We're seeing some of these kinds of like more comforting hues with your browns, but they're a little bit hyped earthened cast. I'll call it that, which is fun, but it's also paired with some of these really beautiful pinks as well as some of these more earthier purples. We also round this out nicely with some indigo blues, some more kind of chambrays, as well as one of the big colors that we've been seeing is what's called exposure. It's the second one from the, right over there, which actually is a little bit more of like a hypered, it's like a hypered pastel, which is something that we're really seeing on the forefront, but it's landing lovely in a lot of sofas, upholsteries, things like that. Oh,
Why don't we try stop and sharing and sharing again?
sure.
Sorry, I just realized it wasn't, they couldn't see it. And we can send out the deck?
Yeah.
Really great.
Thanks. I'll try to be a little bit faster because we've got about 30 minutes.
Sorry to
So
interrupt you.
no worries. Our next color of the season is one that we're calling Watermark. It's really influenced by the growing importance of natural healing greens. I think one of the big sentiments for this story also to talk about is that people are associating kind of this new community as like a healing process. So really looking at how Watermark represents this surreal duality as we seek a sense of belonging and question the nature of our existence. Watermark actually is coming from a palette which we call the sun-worn midtones, which looks at how the pandemic recontextualized our relationship to the past and how that will drive a shift towards sun-faded yet revitalized shades that feel as if they were from a scene in a Polaroid. So as we look at some key elements for materials with belonging, we are looking at the update to a lot of technical applications, one that really explores utility and refinement. They appear both soft and resilient in what we're calling parachuted dimensions that look billowy and weightless, but can be packed perfectly for transient lifestyles. But looking deeper beneath the surreal surfaces, materials explore a multifunctional approach that allows them to be ready for all of nature's elements. One of the growing conversations is around the mono materials. I really love this one, which is a sustainable method that reduces waste by creating pieces from a single material in different iterations. So it recontextualizes the life cycle into something that's completely circular. We're also seeing a lot of industrial precisions coming to the forefront, as well as some of these surreal luminosities, particularly among materials. Materials also explore functionality with a more ethereal approach. As products are performance ready, that feels otherworldly and are prepped for long-term utility in mind. So with resins, we're seeing that they're feeling more lighter, like lighter than air feelings. We're seeing that particularly among a lot of hard goods. Some more technical performance knits, they employ the use of resilient yarns for longevity. A lot of recycled polymers that focus on a high level of wear and tear that is a streamlined path to recycling, as well as a lot of more stainless steel applications that can really withhold but still gives off a more equally polished effect to the trend. With some prints that give a more nod to those travel-ready and adventure-inspired designs, while still offering a sense of otherworldly discover as we embark together. Our first call out is called Utility Check. And so we're seeing a lot of these kinds of checks kind of play in different iterations. We took inspiration from modern constructions and sleek blueprints, things like brutalism that redefine our senses of community. And we're building our new sense of belonging. Through these architectural inspired designs, we want to push forward classic plaid and check designs with a more modern sensibility. One of our favorites here in belonging, we really love these ultra dreamy ethereal ombre dyes that really have pushed forward that escapism quality and unearthed the concept of a place that exists in perhaps just an otherworldly destination of future exploration. The colors in Mirage Melt take inspiration from natural horizons that you're seeing in nature, with the palette collapsing in slow motion from daylight to dusk. And last but not least, we're seeing this gorgeous color blocking design, which was incredibly important for the story as it visualized both the modularity and sustainability aspects through print. We love how the layered and crafted pieces here all appear to give us this lightweight, ready for anything inspiration of billowing fabrics and performance ready design through these patchwork pieces. So our conscious considerations here, looking at some words, we're looking at things like new frontiers, symbols of heritage, grounding spaces, the ideals of transient living. And what that really means is that we're designing for transient flexibility. We're rethinking the meaning of ownership, this new transient reality, and really considering products that are more ready and on the go and more adaptable. We're also considering the equitable future of humans wear, and humans wear is a merge or a new term that's kind of come out that is a mix of like women's wear, men's wear, home wear. It is all encompassing, which is really important. And so looking at how products can deliver a more human-centric wellness and functionality to us all, really putting some consciousness into consideration of how they can be more equitable. And then also cultivating more hive mind thinking, providing space for dialogue, both internally and externally, We're visualizing the interconnection in everything from suppliers to sellers to consumers, questioning how each decision benefits the collective we. So for our next story, we're going to talk about release. So after this great time of tension, we're really looking forward to a period of release. The reopening of our communities gives us an opportunity to leave behind the systems and constructs that hold us back by letting go of oppressive ideologies that limit our ability to express ourselves freely and equitably. We believe to build new ways of being that celebrate our unbound identities as we seek catharsis and process through optimism and celebration. I'm sure you guys know that there's over 16 different gender identities that have kind of come over the forefront of the last 10 years to fruition, and it's really kind of giving presence to looking at how we can kind of be more inclusive as we work through design and what does that really look like. And for us, we've taken a really happy approach to it, one that kind of honors all bodies and expands the notion of what we believe is beautiful and desirable, really pushing past a lot of those things that were detrimental to us from the 80s, and kind of understanding that everyone is beautiful. Everyone has a way that they should be able to celebrate that is accepted. Everybody should be able to kind of, you know, live their life authentically. So we're seeing a huge push towards breaking of these barriers, which is really lovely. So if we're looking at some of the key values here, it's really looking at celebrations and how people celebrate and why they celebrate. One of the biggest things that we've been talking to retailers about is really being more inclusive for celebrations, doing things like Persian New Year, you know, like having products that are available for all religions, all shapes and sizes. And with that, we're really having to break a lot of those barriers that we were kind of like brought from the 1950s on. And we're exploring this unbound identity with a lot of it, you know, especially younger generations. This is our younger story, just so you guys know. They're experiencing multiple different kinds of realms of identity, and it's a lot more open than we've ever seen in the past. And so we're leaving space for that, especially with product design as they kind of explore who they are. And they're really wanting to unleash a lot of this creativity. We're seeing a huge push towards creative, expressive, creative movements in home. So how is release influencing design? So it's time to set ourselves free from the emotional constraints of our past. As we escape from the confines to the colorful, our eyes see new exploits of ecstasy ahead. Release is all about the disruptive joy that adds a skip to our step and a spark to our pulse, an unapologetic getaway to clashed and collage moments of happiness. The sweetness is swift and anything but subtle. Through things like candy-coated colors, inflated shapes, and liquidy lusters, we take away the role of gatekeeper and invite all into our celebratory parlor of elation where the only goal is to feel good and to smile bright. So as you can tell, this is a very happy story. And that is the purpose, right? Is to promote happiness, particularly within the design of your home. And one of the big things that we're seeing right before I talk in the color that I forgot to mention is that we're actually seeing a lot of this happiness come through in non-traditional statements in the home, which is interesting. So instead of using like traditional artwork that is the statement on the wall, we're seeing funkier couches, funnier like statements like decor, or even your coffee table is having a little bit more of that extra artistic element to it as opposed to it being like directly on your walls. We're also seeing this as being kind of like a resurgence of some of that maximalism that people are really craving too. So as we look into color, this is a very fun, vibrant palette that you're like, is this really for home? Yes, it is. And I had to fight really hard for it. Which is kind of fun because we are starting to see, particularly at some of those smaller design fairs throughout Stockholm, throughout Paris, we saw it when we were at Maison Objet, they are all playing in these funky hues, particularly like within decor. We're seeing it in rug patterns. We're starting to see actually it in sofas. This orange that we're going to talk about in a second is the strongest color that I've seen at market in the last year, which is wild. So I'll just pull over to that. It's called Spritz, and it's super fun, but it was the #1 couch color that I've seen. And it's really kind of the it color of the season. It's in everything from fashion all the way to home products, and it cultivates these feelings of joy and happiness while also representing a growing desire to be expressive and bold. And I'll tell you a funny story, and it might kill me, but John Conrad, actually, he's the director of ISFD, which I'm part of, he actually messaged me yesterday with this color from his interior designer going, is this really a color for a couch or for a sofa? And I was like, John, do it. It'll be super fun. It'll be like the statement of your room, and you can kind of design around it, which is what is really key to these colors being so bright and kind of hyper vivid. So as we're looking at some key elements for material, we're seeing how materials take on this really playful interpretation to craft with unrestricted takes on joy through heritage classics. So what I'll say is really important about this particular movement within home is that nostalgia really reigns supreme, but we're seeing how a lot of these heritage kinds of prints and fabrications are being updated in a fun, playful way. And the reason why we're seeing so much nostalgia across the board in design, from vintage all the way to kind of more fun, playful pieces, is that is actually what psychologically consumers associate with comfort. It's things that remind you of your grandmother. It's things that kind of remind you of home that you were associated with when you were a child. That's why we're seeing such a huge resurgence of it past pandemic, because people are really stressed and they want to kind of like figure out what are those comfort items that kind of bring them back into the forefront. So here, the aesthetic of excess is not only fun, it's fundamental in layered embellishments, candy-like constructions, oversaturated dyes, and showy finishes. And some of my favorites here, this chromatic craftsmanship that we're seeing across the board, these really fun ways that make you feel like you were in an art studio, or maybe that you're an artist that you can interpret into your home. And also some of this refabricated heritage, this kind of what I'm calling mix and clash of what feels comforting. If we look at what's happening in materials, so we're seeing a much needed return to unrestrained playful styles and material applications, a lot of textured upholsteries. One of the biggest conversations coming out of Europe is a lot of high slubs. I'll say there weren't so many kind of like pattern and graphic trends and things that were coming out of Maison Objet, but what I saw in every single booth was actually how many like high textural slubs were in every single couch application, every single chair application. So it's seen here in a fun colorway that that kind of like tactile grounding is really important and can kind of add a fun application. We're also seeing a lot of high performance silicones. This is for kind of the indoor outdoor conversation, and it particularly for more of the millennials that are doing a hybrid living approach. It offers a lot of that kind of like sports performance. A lot of tinted glass. It's a little bit more hyper than these ambient hues, carrying in some of those ombres, as well as a lot of bioplastics, really bringing in some of those sustainable conversations as they add an eco solution to plastics that are fun. As we look into patterns and graphics, one of the biggest ones that we're seeing is really what we're calling floral pop. And here you'll find all of the more playful and carefree prints that really embody this sense of optimistic release. So for our florals in this visionary, we wanted to highlight the rise of the Y2K resurgence we see happening from the runways to retail to everywhere in between, and it's quite undeniable. These florals get a bit more loopy, illustrated, and of course, playful. I'm sure you guys have seen this kind of pop up. We're also seeing a lot of these revived, and it really creates kind of this upbeat and cheerful print. We're exploring how to give the traditional and classic print an uplifting and modern energy boost, whether it's through quirky yet minimal print clashing or just a hyper saturated palette. You can really feel the mood boosting vibes here. Mood boosting is really key. And then last but not least, we're looking at Pigment Crush. I love this one, particularly because we started to see so many of these rugs all over TikTok, all over social media start to sell through the pandemic. They definitely have kind of this new take between a floral and a camouflage print. That's this super saturated dye technique. The pigments seem to just burst with energy, allowing this rainbow infusion to seep through with a childlike charm that makes each piece take on a very personal and one-of-a-kind uniqueness. So what are the conscious considerations and takeaways from release? Some key words here is demystifying creativity, really looking at, the redefinition of sexy, things that release tension and bring overall joy. So one of the first takeaways is really healing through celebration, considering how joy and celebration are healing ingredients. Get creative with products and experience that encourage play and support trauma release. We also, number 2 is be a door and not a wall. Question if and how your company promotes gatekeeping and how your offering can be more accessible to all of your consumers. Educate your organization on different cultures and traditions and consider how you can provide access to events and experiences to those who have never had access before. And then stretch the definitions of identity. Be a place of refuge where your customer feels safe and empowered. Rethink sizing, gender constructs, and what it really means to be sexy. And last but not least, we'll take you into Grow. Things get a little bit more prettier here. We take what we learned from lockdown, the ability to be still, silent, and self-reflective, and flourish with a fresh perspective as we rebuild the world around us through positive interactions with our green spaces. Grow examines not only our personal bloom, but the extension of our planet, which serves as a growing home for humanity's developing consciousness. If we look at some of our consumer needs here, we want to reclaim a lot of the kind of food systems or traditional growing systems that we talked about in raw and promote sustainably and equally, which is really important, as you'll see kind of through some of these conversations. So you'll see how it gets a little bit prettier as being less raw, but it's still a very similar conversation in Grow. We also want our everyday objects to become living objects that take on character, representing our own personal biographies. And we're appreciating the healing beauty and benefits of flowers through florotherapy. We're going to talk a lot about that. That's a huge movement, particularly in Grow, and just design in general is really looking not as flowers as a print, but flowers as an entity, as an ingredient for creating dyes, for actually like imprinting seeds into things. We're starting to see more and more of these hard goods and furniture surfaces and even print dyes really reflecting using a lot of the power of flowers. And there's so many different like healing modalities with flowers that people don't realize that come across in fragrance and things like that, that we're seeing also being translated into other realms of design. So some key values here are floral healing, really using flowers and nature around us as a healing modality. We're also seeing a lot more alive objects really come into home. And this is my favorite ones. I really recommend you guys kind of going online and looking at a store called The Longing out of Tel Aviv. She's such an incredible designer and just kind of visionary within this space. You walk through it, I mean, you're seeing trees growing through tables and just creating kind of like the new versions of terrariums and like really looking at more enlivened objects that can kind of like grow with your client at the end of the day as being something, as opposed to like taking, from the wood, it actually kind of brings the wood into the process. Also looking at things like personal growth as we're healing, as well as more natural preservation. If you are going to be taking from Mother Earth, let's preserve it in a really positive way. So how is grow influencing design? As sure as the sun rises and sets, our surroundings sprout and flourish with every season of life. The chromatic collision of botanicals and blooms reminds us that the messiness and chaos of our existence germinates some of the most superb beauty. Things blossom and then they die, an everlasting lesson on the humility of abundance. Earth's treasures are not only in our grasp for a short time, and as gardeners of this beautiful bounty, we take solace in the prestige of Mother Nature. The solar spell of daylight starts with the journey, while drops of water quench the thirst of growth. We're cultivating through the process with delicate structures, just the right amount of romance and the knowledge that fragility isn't a sign of weakness, but allure and artistry. And so this sentiment in particular is near and dear to me because I'm so happy that romance is really coming back into the home. You know, we were in these kind of like stark minimalist shades for a while, particularly through the pandemic when we were kind of like, what's happening? So as we kind of move into spring 23, we're actually starting to see like romance and like all these beautiful florals and pink shades and, you know, kind of this lofty whimsicalness really come back into home. I wouldn't go so far as shabby chic, but, you know, kind of on that same sentiment of when that started. So as we look into color, this is where it kind of gets a little bit more of a vibrant nature approach. We see that we're really grounded in a lot of these really beautiful earthen alive greens, which is really lovely. Even the sagier hues are feeling really pungent, which is nice. Carrying over some of these like even more zesty hues that we're seeing that are traditionally found in nature and kind of punching them into a lot of interior products. We're also rounding out with some more soft pastels as your neutrals. We're seeing a lot of these pink hues really become new neutrals in their own context as they're neutral grounding in nature naturally. So really kind of playing on that and then also rounding it out with some of these wheat hues as well. Our key color for this sentiment is called Serendite, and really kind of playing off of those crystal modalities. It's combining the warmth of coral with a laid-back beige undertone. Serendite emerges as the newest color-infused neutral for the season, invoking a natural radiance that invites us to bask in its comforting glow. It really speaks to how the heightened entrance and desert landscapes and dried nature is driving the emergence of hazy, subtly faded hues. Speaking of some of the dried nature, I'm sure you guys have started to notice within retail, they're particularly doing more dried botanicals throughout. And we're seeing a lot of that kind of interpretations being brought into the home as a preservation conversation. Flowers are an interesting one because, you know, something that you get, it makes you so happy and then it dies. So we're seeing actually that the preservation of doing more dried botanicals throughout is really key. Lots of those kinds of businesses have been popping up through the pandemic. Also with our key elements, here Grow is blooming with vitality as if encasing living objects for preservation and longevity. We're seeing a lot of these bloomed impressions and materials. It's really giving new play to those biophilic designs that we've been talking about the past few seasons. They really felt kind of like weighted and heavy in nature, whereas these feel very light and weightless and beautiful, very romantic, and really capturing kind of nature's joy. Also, a sustainable approach to decadence brings in ocean elements. This is a huge component to the design scene that we're really seeing bring forward. We actually have an entire report called Ocean Worship, where we're seeing that there's a huge resurgence in looking at the ocean. Right now, it's the Decade of the Ocean was just claimed by OSHA, which is really interesting as we're doing a lot more, you know, deep dives into what is in the ocean, et cetera, and using it for inspiration. So we're seeing things all the way from like seashell waste to using crab waste to repurpose materials, all the way to like using kind of the more glittering aspects of pearl and pearlized finishes and oysters and things really kind of come back through design. So sea sourced is a really interesting topic as the fascination with the unknown has become a huge source of inspiration. And overall, Grow really encapsulates this soft, decadent theme that's reemerging through design. So with Grow, we start to understand that our materials are leading the way for connecting the path for how nature helps us heal mentally and physically. Where material touch and form gives relief to the everyday mundane as we turn to organic blends and soft essentials. Honoring our commitment to the oceans, shell waste and fishing nets are repurposed into new treasures. From hard good applications to decor, it really offers this new solution, particularly seashell waste, that's a solution to concrete which isn't very sustainable. We're seeing a lot of eco fibers like cotton and flax that are also really top of mind. It provides a soothing coolness, while a lot of this bio-grown composites are boasting compostable aspects. So in a similar vein, we're also starting to see things within packaging really change. A lot of these waxed linens and stuff are really coming into the forefront for everyday mass products. Within Patterns and Graphics, we explore Grow through a sense of tranquility and refreshed spirit as we look outward with a fresh mindset of rejuvenation and inward reflection. So florals are incredibly important for this story. We look to them not only as a seasonal classic, but how they transform and heal through a more floral therapy response. We're really loving this page in particular with these ultra delicate and super ripe displays that truly capture that sense of bundled herbs or tranquil bouquets with a sweet and quiet presence. I'll tell you that this piece, that hard good piece that you're seeing on the far right over there, was one of the biggest sources of inspiration for this season. The designer actually really worked with a lot of these kind of like murky, milky resins to kind of preserve the nature in place. And it's something that we're seeing across all aspects of design come into the foray, which is really nice. We're also tapping into that oceanic spirit as we look to the oceans for movement of water of inspiration here. So marble is always a pattern that we look to update for home. And here we really love how you can feel the energy of the ocean through some of these marbling techniques. It really gives an ebb and flow to these overall prints. We especially enjoyed like the table and ceramic piece styles. It's really cool how it's incorporated in this like some sort of color blocking and even pattern mixing among some of those gorgeous marble swirls, bringing that sense of horizon and shoreline to the designs in a subtle way. We're also always kinds of questioning, even for home, how do we contextualize camouflage in kind of a new way? What are kind of more of those marbled textured prints? So this one is called Sprouted Camo. And we're moving camo kind of away from the idea of combat and war, and instead bringing it back to its original printed purpose of living amongst nature, which is what it was originally for. So we love taking the classic pattern and opening it up to a softer and even more delicate style that offers opportunity to become one with our environments by using nature as a printed inspiration. And last but not least, for our stripes this season in Grow, we again take this beachy element and find inspiration among nature to bring a fresh update to classics. We love how this simple stripe gets reworked with a more organic tone, from seaweed-inspired lines to shell imprinted all over patterns, and even bringing this linear dye technique that looks like it's been seen submerged in water. So there are key considerations for Grow are really looking at things like floral therapy, the blue spaces, more alive objects, and overall just humble opulence. I would say the top three is really promoting that preservation that we talked about throughout design, preserving a lot of that nature throughout different elements, as well as the big impact of small steps, considering steady, sustainable measures that can be integrated into your stories and facilities at a local level, really looking at localization, as well as the ideals of healing with nature. This is a really big conversation in home, as we're starting to see that more and more people want to bring the nature in as a healing modality, as opposed to it being just a standard design modality. So there you go. Thank you, guys. We're so excited. That was a lot. Is there any questions? I have like 2 minutes. Sure. Yeah, so this will actually be on the Interwoven's website, and you can watch the full Zoom or have the presentation too. Yeah, and also too, if you look in the magazine, a lot of our conversations that we had were featured in the magazine this time. There's a QR code that you can use in the magazine that actually gives you access to all 4 of these stories. It gives you a lot of really great language and color, etc.
I just did more comment and it's amazing. I
Thank
think
you.
that's unbelievable. How long did it take you guys? How long did it take you guys to do this?
So we work 24 months ahead. So I'll just give you an example. We're working on spring 24 now. We started last month. It takes about 4 months of development that we do completely. I'm one of 35 like true hardcore creatives that put all of this together across markets. And my division is one of 7. So we work with women's, men's, kids, accessories, beauty and wellness, youth, really looking at what is happening on a consumer level. So we start there and then drill it down into product design. And we have amazing material specialists with the MBA from NC State. Our pattern and graphics has an MBA from Parsons. They really actually put the majority of this presentation that you saw together. I'm just regurgitating their beautiful work for home. But yeah, they really have like a very deep knowledge of the industries and how these things kind of push forward. Yeah, so I would say that anywhere, usually about 4 months.
So you're saying this is just for the home industry?
Yeah.
You guys do these things for all the.
Yeah. Yeah. We also offer a ton of webinars, a lot of free webinars, a lot of really great ways to kind of connect with us. If you follow us on social or, you know, even on our website, we can get our newsletter and things like that. It'll really kind of keep you updated with things that we do, but we love spreading all of this knowledge throughout the season. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep, we do. We work with different, different membership or groups of people to kind of create like sponsored deals for sure, because we're a subscription-based service that you can kind of log into, or you can hire us to do consulting, either or. But yeah, we can definitely do that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all again for coming. Sorry for the interruption in the middle of the presentation. I did want to just mention one more thing to you guys while you're here. I would love for you to check out, there's a Reprieve mobile tour out at the second floor of the tower, right outside the entrance. And it kind of shows how they take the water bottles and turn them into pellets that then become yarn. They also have a lot of information about the partners they work with. So a lot of our exhibitors here. And I think obviously sustainability is very important to everyone. And that's a good story to share with your customers about how the yarn was created and into this beautiful fabric that you're sharing with them. So would love for you to check that out. And again, 2 o'clock with Tencel, 4 o'clock, we'll be back here with Jay and our panel of designers, and would love to have you stay for that as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
So sorry. Yeah.
Oh, we got some chats.
Yeah.
Hi. Good. I was gonna come down a little bit.
That is Max. Yes.
Good. Because if you travel,
Yeah, for real.
yeah. Oh, everybody's saying good.
Is this where we'll be?
Yes.